I'm Gwen, Preston of Resource Maven. We're here at the November Metals Investor Forum, and I am joined by Scott Close of EMX Royalty. Thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So,
pleasure to be here again.
It's always lovely to talk to you, to catch up on EMX. EMX, always lots to talk about. Huge portfolio, big bank account. So these are the foremost things. So let's start with the big bank account, because I think that's probably a question that you get faced with pretty frequently in your conversations with investors, potential investors. EMX transformative transaction selling the Malmesh project has put, you currently have $75 million in the bank. So let's talk about what EMX plans to do with that money. And I'm sure you always get asked whether there will be a dividend or a share buyback. So let's capture all that.
Yep, perfect. Because those were two questions that I get asked a lot these days. Mm-hmm. So actually we have about $77 million in the treasury right now and close to $4 million in marketable securities. And those marketable securities are shares that we have received from companies as payment as they enter into property agreements with us.
Yeah.
And we are able to realize, hopefully, significant capital gains on those shares. Mm-hmm. And we've certainly done that in the past, and so those have served us very well. But what we're going to do with that cash is we're looking to deploy that cash by buying a cash flowing royalty or royalties or a strategic investment that would provide us with immediate cash flow. And so once we do that, that would make us decidedly and sustainably cash flow positive. Once we achieve that, then we will implement a dividend.
Right.
And we would look to increase that dividend incrementally each year.
Right.
And once we are able to implement that, I think we will see a substantially different share price.
So I think there's sort of two sides to that. First of all, it wouldn't be just a special dividend giving out the cash that you have. It would be using the cash to create a situation for a dividend that's ongoing, which should be preferable to shareholders in the long term. And then secondly, like you say, the re-rating, royalty companies, there's sort of some tiers of royalty companies. There's the more developing royalty companies all the way up to the top tier royalty companies, and you get an increasing premium with each one. And a big differentiator is, are you at a point where your cash situation means that you can be returning money to shareholders? So yeah, if you can make that leap, then there should be a share price re-rating as part of that.
Absolutely, there's no question about that.
Yeah.
That really opens the door for a lot of institutional buying.
Right, because they want yield.
That's right.
And you would generate yield. Okay, let's talk about, massive portfolio, tons of royalties, tons of projects, partnerships, things like that. I want to just grab one of those that I think deserves some conversation, and this is in Serbia. This is the Timok property, which has a long EMX backstory that we don't need to get involved with. You guys were sort of integral to figuring out that there was an opportunity there in the first place. Now it's owned by Zijin, who's pushing towards production really soon. So do you want to capture a bit of that backstory, the amount that you guys have invested in, and sort of what this could mean to EMX going forward?
So Zijin is advancing the property right now. Of course, originally that discovery was made by Reservoir Minerals. They were consequently bought out by Nevsun, and then they were bought out by Zijin. And then, so Zijin controlled the upper portion of the deposit, and they basically controlled about half of the lower deposit, and the other half of the lower part of the deposit was controlled by Freeport-McMoRan. So they have recently bought out Freeport-McMoRan's interest there, and so Zijin controls the whole project. So now they can really put their foot to the floor in advancing this, and they tell us they're going to be in production in 2021.
Which is around the corner.
That's right. So that's coming up very quickly. And Zijin really wants to get on this thing. This is going to be a key asset in their portfolio. And sort of the interesting thing about this is, even though we had royalties in the greater Timok area, we did not have a royalty specifically on that piece of ground. But early on, when the discovery was in very early days and just beginning to be fleshed out because of our geologic intel in the area, we recognized that there was a significant chance of this being a major discovery, and we were able to flesh out a 0.5% royalty on the property.
Yeah.
And we were able to buy that royalty for $200,000 Canadian. Now, a number of analysts have taken a look at the upper and lower zones at Timok, and they estimate life of mine that royalty will likely be worth somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion to us, and those are US dollars. So we spent $200,000 Canadian, and ultimately we hope to realize in excess of $500 million US there. We think that's good value.
So that kind of relates back to the first question, how EMX plans to use its money. It plans to use its money on, utilize its expertise to make investments for the company that hopefully have, not all of your investments go from 200,000 to $500 million, but that's the goal, and
That's right.
and it's happening in at least one case, and,
Sure.
and that's what you're out there looking for,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that's all. The other sort of important key cash flowing royalty in the portfolio is the Leeville royalty.
That's right.
And I think it's also worth just a quick look at what's going on there. This is a royalty that's already paid out to you guys, $13.5 million US over the time that you've had the royalty.
Right. 7 years.
But it looks like it's getting better going forward.
That's right. So Newmont has recently released a number of diagrams, a map, and a cross-section, and some other data that they have fleshed out a couple of discoveries that are firmly on our royalty footprint there. And they use some terminology, I believe it was drill indicated ounces or something along those lines.
A Newmont
Certainly
term.
not 43101 compliant, but of course that's their internal terminology there. But they have recognized millions of ounces of additional gold mineralization there. So we think the prospects for royalty cash flow coming off that royalty property are substantial in the future.
So there you have it. There's lots more going on, but big bank account, looking to deploy it, to get the re-rating, to get to cash flow positive, to hopefully implement a dividend. It's fun times for EMX at this juncture.
It is, and as an indicator of what we think is coming down the road, I will point out that the CEO, founder, and president of the corporation, David Cole, has bought in excess of 646,000 shares of EMX stock within the past year. And always keep in mind, a CEO sells shares for a lot of reasons, but only buys shares for one.
That's succinct. I'll leave it there. Thank you so
Okay,
much for
thank
joining
you.
us today.